In the coming days, a meeting is being prepared that is already causing tension in global markets and diplomatic circles. Donald Trump and Xi Jinping will hold personal talks that, according to leading media outlets, could become a turning point in the prolonged trade conflict between the United States and China. Officially, both sides claim they are ready to sign a framework agreement that could lay the groundwork for a future deal. However, according to insiders close to both leaders, this meeting may not be a step toward reconciliation, but a carefully calculated game in which each side pursues its own hidden goals. According to sources close to the Chinese government, Beijing intends to use the upcoming negotiations not for concessions, but to buy time. In China, there is an understanding that American tariffs have begun to exert pressure on the economy, but at the same time, they provide an incentive for large-scale internal restructuring. In recent months, state corporations and industrial giants have been actively shifting production to domestic supply chains, reducing their dependence on American components and technologies. According to Bloomberg, the Chinese Ministry of Industry has already launched subsidy programs for enterprises that need to replace American microchips and parts in the defense industry. Analysts note that China is effectively preparing for autonomy, a state in which sanctions and tariffs will cease to have strategic importance. Trump, according to sources in the White House, is aware of Beijing's tactics. He understands perfectly well that the Chinese side will try to buy time and is therefore preparing his own response. According to the Washington Post, there is discussion of the possibility of immediately introducing new tariffs if China tries to delay implementing the terms of the agreement or use the meeting as a diplomatic smokescreen. The White House is considering expanding export controls to restrict China's access to advanced American technologies in artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and military electronics. Trump himself, speaking to journalists, said that he is ready to make a fantastic deal, but only if it is truly beneficial for America. According to Politico and The Guardian, negotiations between the delegations have already taken place at the ministerial level and concluded with the coordination of a preliminary text that sources call a framework agreement. That is, a framework arrangement without concrete commitments. This phrasing often conceals the absence of real breakthroughs. Beijing deliberately avoids precise wording to maintain room for maneuver, while Washington seeks to present the talks as a diplomatic victory. As a result, both sides gain benefits. China gets a respite, and the United States gets media success. But behind this diplomatic politeness lies a cold calculation. In recent weeks, Chinese state media, including the Xinhua agency, have increasingly published statements about the need to preserve achieved results and mutual respect. Experts interpret this as a signal that Beijing does not intend to change its strategy. It is merely stabilizing the situation until it completes its technological restructuring. According to Reuters, China is rapidly working on creating national analogs of American microchips and component bases for telecommunications equipment. At the same time, Beijing is increasing its exports of rare earth elements to Southeast Asian countries, creating alternative markets in case of further escalation of the conflict with the United States. Washington fully understands this. Analytical reports from the U.S. National Security Council indicate that Beijing may use the meeting with Trump as a tactical move, a demonstration of readiness for dialogue, followed by a series of covert economic actions. A former U.S. intelligence officer told Fox News that China never comes to the table just like that. If they come to talk, it means they have already calculated the consequences several moves ahead. Goldman Sachs, in its latest analytical report, writes that even if a formal agreement is signed, most of the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration will remain in force at least until the end of next year. This means that the global supply chain will continue to restructure, with unpredictable consequences for the world economy. China, according to economists, is using this moment to strengthen regional ties. Consultations have already taken place in Beijing with representatives from Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia about expanding the supply of components and creating joint production zones. This is part of a strategy that analysts from The Economist call bypassing Washington, the creation of an economic bloc independent of White House decisions. And although China officially declares that it does not seek confrontation, In reality, it is preparing for a new phase of the trade war, where the main weapons will be technological superiority and control over critical materials. All this makes the upcoming meeting not just a diplomatic event, but a moment capable of shaping the strategy of the global economy for years ahead. One wrong move, one careless statement, and the markets could react with panic, sending the yuan and dollar exchange rates spiraling. Insiders say that several scenarios are already being prepared behind the scenes. In one, if the talks are successful, there will be an announcement about the restoration of strategic dialogue and a temporary reduction in tariffs. In another, if the sides fail to reach an agreement, the United States could immediately impose 100% tariffs on a range of Chinese goods, including electronics, batteries, and solar panels. In that case, the conflict would move into an open phase, where diplomacy would give way to economic pressure. According to sources close to Trump, the White House is prepared for anything, but judging by the activity of its state corporations, Beijing is no less ready. That is why many analysts believe that the upcoming meeting is not a step toward reconciliation, but a prelude to a new round of confrontation. On the surface, everything will look like a dialogue for peace and stability, but in reality, it is a clash of two strategies, two systems, two world models. And in this game, no one intends to blink first. On the contrary, it seems that both sides are deliberately pushing the situation toward a critical point where diplomacy becomes a tool of pressure, and every smile at the negotiating table turns into part of a grand strategic illusion. According to sources in Asian financial circles, Chinese state banks have been actively buying gold and foreign currency in recent weeks, which may indicate preparation for possible currency fluctuations after the meeting. At the same time, in the United States, there has been a surge in activity among lobbying groups representing the interests of industrial corporations, demanding that the White House not yield an inch to China. The loudest voices come from the steel, aerospace, and automotive industries. They see the tariff war not merely as a clash of interests, but as an opportunity to bring manufacturing back to America, and they openly urge Trump to push Beijing to the limit. America's international allies are also watching the situation with concern. In Brussels and Tokyo, there are growing fears that another round of the US-China confrontation could disrupt global supply chains and trigger a new wave of inflation. European analysts are already calling the upcoming meeting the moment of truth for the global economy. If the deal fails, it could set off a chain reaction affecting not only industry, but also the energy sector, logistics, and even currency markets. But at the heart of it all lies a simple truth. Both Washington and Beijing are acting out of cold calculation. Neither leader can afford to appear weak. For Trump, the meeting is a chance to reaffirm his image as a tough defender of America before his supporters. For Xi Jinping, it is an opportunity to demonstrate that China does not yield to external pressure and is ready to defend its interests to the end. Thus, the upcoming meeting between Trump and Xi may turn out to be little more than a showcase, a diplomatic performance behind which lies a real power struggle. On the surface, there will be smiles, joint statements, and photos against the backdrop of national flags. But behind the scenes, it will be a battle for control over the future of the global economy. And the answer to the key question, who will win this round, will be known very soon.